Good morning. First off, you'll be happy to know that the panel has asked me not to bother taking the time to read all of their bios, so we can get right down to having a really good discussion and make the best use of our time here. We've heard over the last day and a half and leading up to the LNG conference just what an incredibly transformational opportunity we have before us in creating an LNG industry in British Columbia. We've heard how it's going to take a lot of partnership and a lot of teamwork to make the reality happen. And we've also got a sense of the incredible amount of goodwill that's being demonstrated by all of the partners and stakeholders in wanting to help create this generational, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the people of BC. We've heard that we've got partnership from not only the proponents and government, but from labor, working with First Nations, and all of our academic partner community in the province that will have the responsibility for ensuring that we have a trained and skilled workforce not only to build out the LNG opportunity, but to operate it going forward for years to come. And in fact, ensuring that we have the workforce available and skilled people available in the province to be able to support all of the other ancillary industries that will benefit from the creation of this very transformational opportunity. So, having made those opening remarks, I'd like to introduce our panel to you from your left to right. First of all, we have Laurie Rancourt, President of Northern Lights College. Then Kathy Kinloch, President of BCIT. And next, Amber Papo, Executive Director of Skills Canada, BC. And on her left, Dr. Arvind Gupta, CEO and Scientific Director of MITAX. And finally, Gary Herman, Interim CEO of the Industry Training Authority. Welcome, panel. So, as we consider the question, the overriding question, what are we going to do to ensure we have a skilled labor force available to successfully build out and operate an LNG industry in BC? I'd ask you, all of you, to answer one question at the front end, and I'll direct the question to you. You can answer this individually. What specifically is your post-secondary institution or organization doing to equip students with the tools necessary to be successful in BC's LNG industry? First to you, Laurie Rancourt.
Thank you, Brett. Well, at Northern Lights College, one of the advantages that we have is that the natural gas industry is not new to us. We have years and years of experience. We're located in northeastern BC, where there's been an oil and gas industry for literally decades, and some of the previous speakers have talked about that. So one of the first things that we're doing is increasing, building on the experience and the partnerships and the connections that we already have, increasing cohorts in those existing programs that are already training people for the upstream gas industry. And building from that to make sure that it's expanding into the new trades and the new things that are going to be required as we expand into this LNG component of that industry. We're also leveraging, at Northern Lights College, we've had a Center of Excellence in Oil and Gas since about 2006, and most recently have been identified as the lead, with the leadership role in the BC Center of Training Excellence in Oil and Gas. So that helps us bring together proponents from across the various pieces of the industry partners in education. One of our strongest partnerships is with British Columbia Institute of Technology. Getting all of those players at the table to make sure that we have collaborative approaches to developing and evolving the training that's going to be required. Working with Aboriginal communities to adapt training and approaches to their individual needs. We have a number of specific projects that are happening on a community by community basis because the needs in one community tend to be very different from the needs in another community. So it's that individualized, targeted approach that we find is important. We're developing, actively engaged in developing some new products already. We're not waiting for things to come. We're already embroiled in things that are happening and evolving. So we're in the process of developing an entry-level natural gas laborer program, and that is through the Centre of Training Excellence in Oil and Gas, so that it will have that provincial scope and that provincial approach. We're also in the process of the final stages of developing a competency-based assessment tool. And that tool will be used to accelerate access to jobs, access to entering the workforce, or access to accelerated entry into training programs for people that are displaced from other industries and can transfer into the natural gas industry or the LNG industry. It can be used to assess the competencies of internationally trained individuals who want to settle in this area and work in the industry. And it can also be used with local Aboriginal communities, with adults that maybe don't have any formal training, but do have a background and an experience that can help them get a leg up and start not necessarily at square one as they're trying to get into the industry. Through Northern Opportunities, which is something that I think many of you have probably already heard of, it's a partnership with the school districts in our region, industry, government, and it's really focusing on increasing the dual credit opportunities. And that was spoken of as well in a number of the other panels, the importance of getting young people engaged in this training very early, because there is an urgency here. And we need to get them thinking about it early, and we need them to be looking at the opportunities that are related to the long-term jobs and not leaving without a high school diploma to take the short-term labor jobs that they can make good money in. Finally, I would say that the biggest thing that we're doing is striving to not lose sight of the fact that the LNG industry is part of a broader industry. It's not something that can stand alone. It's part of there's the upstream natural gas industry, the midstream, and the downstream, which is the LNG piece of it. But if you don't have enough workers in the upstream or the midstream, you're going to have nothing to flow through the pipes and then send offshore. So it's really looking at that broad scope, and also recognizing that an LNG industry is only going to thrive in strong British Columbia communities. And so the training that we're looking at, preparing a skilled workforce, has to look at the broad strength of a community. We're still focusing, we've got Northern Health at the table in some of the collaborations that we're working on. We're strengthening our social service worker program, the health sciences, business, human resources. We have to look really at this as a broad industry that has many, many moving parts.
Okay, thanks, Laurie. Kathy Kinlock, same question to you.
Well, thanks, Brad, and good morning. It's great to be here for this panel as well for colleagues, and already I can tell there's some common themes that will come through. So BCIT has the pleasure of offering many trades and technology programs that are relevant to the LNG sector. In fact, we believe that we offer quite a few of them, and we also want to look at how we organize them. As a new president over the last 4 months, what we've done is start to develop a plan. How are we going to move forward and be effective and relevant and be an effective partner in our plan as well? So our plan is based on some key principles. First, the execution and the focus on partnerships with K-12, with industry, First Nations, and as well with our sister post-secondary organizations. And as well, the second is leveraging our provincial mandate. BCIT has a provincial mandate that we're pleased to honor, but it means that we need to partner in our engagement and be respectful of the regional communities and the local communities. The third is that the BCIT is our focus on LNG. We recognize, to Laurie's point earlier, that we must maintain our focus as well on other areas, including mining, shipbuilding, our manufacturing, and our professional organizations and degrees as well. And we know we're not going to get it perfect. I don't think any of us in this room the last couple of days would say that, so we need to have a continual learning cycle that we share together. And our plan is going to be based on action, outcome oriented. It's not going to be a plan that doesn't have any deliverables in it. So we've started to look at our own internal capacity as step one, and that's been key. What programs and services are we offering that we can retool, move the resources over so that they're focused on LNG relevant programming, and that's a tough exercise in post-secondary for those of you who've been through it. We've also been listening to experts from elsewhere, and Peter Diabol has been very helpful from Pit Crew in helping us gain some insights where we could be more effective in our trades training, but as well in our programming that we offer. And that Australian experience is but one that we can help frame our plan on. So as a result, we've developed this point plan to drive our internal activities, but also our external alignment with the LNG sector and in support of government's initiatives for the skills. We think together all of this will focus a shared goal, and that's to make sure that the sector has a workforce it needs when and where it needs, and that British Columbians have the opportunity to be first in line for the jobs. So we know this will require a lot of innovative effort and innovative teaching as well, and new ways of looking at collaboration. It's a strong focus on apprenticeship, and we'll undoubtedly talk about that later with our other speakers, but it involves intentional building partnerships with K-12 sector, getting these kids in earlier and encouraging them through an effective apprenticeship model. So working with labor is critical to BCIT as we start to move forward. Partnering with other post-secondary agencies is key as well, and that goes at the college level and the university level, to make sure that we're not duplicating and we're partnering and creating pathways and that our students can follow in the course of their career. So we look forward to taking more of a consortium approach with post-secondary. Also with the First Nations developments in many First Nations, particularly around the youth, and providing specific skills and training that they can participate in the LNG opportunities. Online capabilities is an area that we're quite interested in, and we're actually creating a center of excellence around online, recognizing that it's not just about the bricks and mortars for post-secondary, but it's about creating, training, and innovative learning experiences that are different in our learning and teaching technology. And for those of you who might have been to the market square downstairs, you'll see a number of simulatory activities going on that are small examples of how we want to move forward. Those activities can be carried out into any community throughout the province. We're also establishing an assessment center of excellence to look at competency evaluation, gap assessment, and credential evaluation. Again, the key is to get the critical workforce, critical people into the workforce, and to make sure there's no gaps, or we minimize gaps as much as we can, and increase in awareness in our workforce of the opportunities that are out there. We're focusing just not on the immediate, but also on the longer term, and that means thinking about how we can work with industry and talk about the major demands for all the jobs, including construction, engineers, and instrumentation technologies. We need to respond, and that's one of the key deliverables that BCIT does, is we respond and work closely with industry, but we need to be tied together and look at new programs. And one such program that we've started is an LNG operator program, pulling a number of pieces together from our, that will be starting soon, and pulling a number of pieces together from our current operations and offerings so that we can bring a program that would be relevant to industry. And as we receive more feedback from industry, we'll continue to do so. So our goal is to be a player and be a relevant and contributing collaborator and partner as we move forward, and we're very excited about this future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Amber Papo, what's your organization doing to help ensure success?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Before I state what we do with Skills BC, I'd like to state an old adage that it takes a village to raise a child, and put that and apply that to an employee, because I believe that it takes an entire village to create a skilled employee. And by that, what I mean is that there's individuals and organizations that work at different levels. There's the initial career development and exploration, then there's the education and training, and eventually the mentoring and hiring. Skills BC, the organization that I lead, fits in that village at the part of youth engagement. Skills BC is an affiliate of an international organization that since 1946 has been working with millions of young people across the globe, offering education and mentoring opportunities that promote skilled trade and technology careers. And here in BC, we have a long history as well. We've been here since 1994, so about 20 years. We have a very large organization that's very grassroots. We have about 600 volunteers in communities across the province, the majority of which are in educators, industry, and labor. We work with about 12,000 young people each year, and we do this by offering hands-on project-based learning, primarily, if you're familiar with the organization, in a venue like an Olympic-style competition. We offer actually 14 of those competitions across the province. We develop this type of programming with our partnerships, and that goes back to the whole village concept. We have very strong partnerships with the provincial government, federal government, the communities we work in, the education system, both K-12 system and the post-secondary institutions, as well as other labor organizations, and of course, primarily with industry. It is those professionals that help us develop and conceptualize our programs, and they also help implement those programs. And I believe that the biggest strength that Skills BC offers in this whole concept of a village is the fact that we connect. We're a connector. We're able to offer programming directly to students, and also at the same time influencing parents and teachers on their perceptions of what's needed in terms of careers and in particular in trades, and which will directly affect the LNG trades in particular. And we do this by, again, having this established partnerships, again, that expand across the province. And we're able to, in terms of industry, for example, speak with industry, ask them what it is that they need, and we're able to communicate that to students in a very direct manner. So we do offer the 14 competitions that I spoke of. Those are Olympic-style competitions where young people that are already in the trades, from junior competitions in grade 8s and 9s all the way up to post-secondary apprentices, they are featuring what they're already skilled at, and they compete for a gold medal. That gold medal on a regional level will go to a provincial level and eventually to nationals, and then hopefully they'll win at nationals and move on to onto the international platform. So we're able to also act as a feature of what Canadian trades and training is able to offer on a world scale. But again, like I said, I think the most important thing that we offer as an organization is the fact that we are grassroots, that our program is unique, and that we have that connection that's direct to the people, the stakeholders, and those people that you want to rise up into a future workforce, which I believe is incredibly important for the LNG industry. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amber. Arvind Gupta, I introduced you as CEO and Scientific Director of MyTax, but you're also incoming President of the University of British Columbia as of July 1st. So you can choose to give comments as you see fit. But first of all, from the MyTax perspective, I heard Kathy talk about relevance. I've heard you talk about relevance often. From the MyTax perspective, what has to be done to ensure success in a skilled workforce?
Well, thank you very much, Brad. And let me just say that it's wonderful to be up here with so many esteemed colleagues. I just want to start by pointing out that there's a really symbiotic relationship between the post-secondary sector and the economy. There's little doubt that our universities and colleges have done very well because of a flourishing resource sector in British Columbia, and also we've contributed to the economy growing, the resource economy growing, by producing the kinds of skilled individuals that go out there and make real contributions. So I think this kinds of relationship is key to understand, and is really timely that we discuss it today. As we build out the LNG sector, I think it's an opportunity to think about how we can consolidate Canada's position as an economic and educational, technological leader. You know, how do we take the fact that we're going to build a world-class industry and become the best at things like environmental mitigation, efficient transportation, remote sensing, and how do we make sure that what we do pays dividends to future generations? Because we're developing this industry not just for us. We have a duty. It's incumbent upon us to make sure we think about how our children and our grandchildren will benefit from what we do today. And I'm always motivated by what NASA did. So many of us think of NASA as a space exploration program, but if you actually look at it, there's $11 coming back to the US Treasury for every dollar invested in NASA. And that's because the NASA space program invented LEDs, solar cells, invisible braces, and 43 other technologies that are having huge amounts of spin-offs. So the question is, how do we really position ourselves to take this wonderful resource, develop the projects around it, and make sure there's future spin-offs? And really that's what MyTax is about. It's about understanding the needs of existing and emerging sectors, understanding the kinds of business challenges they'll face, and then rolling those challenges into issues that we can address in our universities. You know, already UBC attracts $500 million of research funding every year. I think we have to ask ourselves is, how do we turn that into knowledge development and commercialization that's going to keep BC on the cutting edge? And that's in a big part what MyTax is thinking about. It's thinking about what is the coordinating body for industry, university research. How do we use that to improve Canadian R&D performance and ultimately productivity, so that industries like LNG are really at the cutting edge, they're the most productive in the world, and we can always take on other countries irrespective of new technologies coming down the road. So I think there's a second part to this narrative, and that is that we want to be ready for the next opportunity that comes at us. And I think one thing we've learned in the current rollout of the LNG is there's a huge advantage to being first out of the gate. The first adopter, in this case mainly Australia, does come with an advantage. So we want to make sure that as we develop the LNG and new technologies, we're the first to adopt them, we're the first to lever them. As new resources come on stream, we're first out of the gate. Our people are ready to pounce on these opportunities. We don't want the next time be saying, geez, now we've got to think about how to rechange our post-secondary system. We should have it ready. You know, Brad talked about relevance. That is being relevant, is making sure we're thinking a little bit ahead about what needs to be done. Let me just talk a little bit about the kinds of projects that we're doing at MyTax. We're looking at shale gas extraction, environmental mitigation. We're funding projects on fracking and understanding effects on groundwater. At UBC, we have a new pipeline integrity institute forming that's understanding pipeline corrosion and coatings and how to minimize environmental harm. All the students we're training in this way become very relevant very quickly to society. One thing that we've seen when MyTax does these projects is a huge uptake of the students we produce. We know that 91% of students we produce will end up staying in British Columbia and working in British Columbia, which is a pretty dramatic. It's about 25% higher than students that don't participate in our programs. So it's really a way of building this partnership with industry that gets these students moving from the university into these companies in a pretty direct manner. The last thing I want to say is that when we develop these kinds of resource projects, for me, it's really about how do we lever this to develop our human resources. Our human resources are the most crucial resources we have. So yes, we want to develop human resources to support this industrial sector. We also want to make sure that we leave behind the legacy of really top-notch people who are very productive, very innovative, very competitive. And this is something where I think our education institutions need to work closely together. We cannot, at our universities, be training individuals in isolation to what's happening across society, what's happening across the educational framework. We need to build links between, in this case, I'm going to be coming to UBC, and between BCIT, our colleges, our other universities, and think collaboratively about the kinds of training we're doing so that students can seamlessly move in and out. When one of our, let's say a PhD students from UBC goes out and works in one of these industries, they're going to be working with a fairly large cross-section of individuals trained by different types of institutions with very different backgrounds. I think it's incumbent upon us to think about how that happens and make sure that we're training in a way that that individual fit into this broader space. So it's something that I think we're going to have to think about pretty carefully.
Thanks, Arvin. Gary Herman, what's your perspective?
Thank you, Brad, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. First, I'd just like to say that I'm very proud to tell you that I started my career in the trades and am dual certified as a tool and die maker and die sinker, so I'm an actual product of the apprenticeship system. Well, some of you may know what the Industry Training Authority does. Many of you may not know so much about it. ITA manages BC's industry trades training certification system in British Columbia while working together with industry, training providers, labor, and government. And we are a crown agency of the BC government. Currently, we have 37,000 apprentices and over 9,500 employers in the province who sponsor apprentices, and we know from the labor market predictions that we need a lot more than that. The government recently released the ITA Mandate Review Report with 29 recommendations, and the BC Skills for Job Blueprint with another host of recommendations included. It's a time now for ITA to refocus and enhance our apprenticeship system to better match industry needs, provide the highest level of training for our apprentices, and get students from study into the workplace more quickly. Now, LNG is a priority for all of us. That's why we're all here. The latest data from the Blueprint plan is that 100,000 jobs will be required for about 5 LNG plants, and they could be starting as soon as 2015. These jobs include about 12 trades, from carpenter to welder to sheet metal worker to heavy equipment operator, etc., just to name a few. And to achieve that, we have to work together to meet that demand with industry, labor, First Nations, the training providers, the various government ministries, and secondary and post-secondary training providers, but both systems in achieving that. So ITA is currently working on a 90-day transition plan that came out of the mandate review, and a major focus will be on more direct industry engagement and other commitments for ITA as laid out in the Skills for Jobs Blueprint. And just a couple of those include doubling the number of high school ACIT students, for example, up to 5,000. An ACIT student is taking level 1 of technical training while they're still in high school and receiving dual credit for first level of apprenticeship training as well as their high school diploma. We're hiring an additional 10 apprenticeship advisors to supplement the 4 that we already have on the ground. We currently have them in Nanaimo, Terrace, Prince George, and Kelowna. So we'll be hiring another 10, and 5 of those are going to be dedicated to working with Aboriginal apprentices and employer sponsors to help them also on their apprenticeship journeys. We're working with other jurisdictions across Canada to ensure that we're harmonizing apprenticeship training programs, both from the programs and the standards across the country. We're fostering partnerships between industry and trainers to find ways to share facilities and equipment, developing sponsorship models where an apprentice doesn't have to do all of their training with one employer. They can do it with several employers. And we're also supporting flexible apprenticeship training models that will improve the outcomes. So these are just a few of the things that ITA is working on to try and make the system better and address the upcoming needs. And as we've heard many times, the first priority is ensuring British Columbians are first in line for the jobs, and that includes First Nations communities. However, we've heard the numbers and we've heard the math. Even with that, local workers will not be enough. It'll be essential to get skilled workers from across BC, across Canada, and internationally to help us satisfy this demand. ITA also is working on significant programs through the Canada-BC Labour Market Agreement. We have, since 2008 and 2009, there have been almost 1,900 Aboriginal students who have gone through the program. In addition to that, 2,100 women have entered the trades through the program, and 1,500 immigrants. So the numbers are very encouraging. They're up significantly from what they've been in the past, and those will continue. So in summary, ITA will be working with our partners in industry, labor, the training providers, the government, the Aboriginal communities, to do what it takes to meet the demand for the LNG projects ahead and all of the other skilled trades requirements that are needed in British Columbia. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gary. I'd like to throw one out to the panel for all of you to jump on if you choose to answer the question. We heard throughout the conference that it's important that we don't hesitate, that we take the steps necessary to do what it is we need to be successful, and in this instance, create a skilled workforce. In the earliest days of this, what can we be doing? What can we focus on? What can we show to industry and labor and the other stakeholders as being tangible in our efforts? And how do we how do we secure those early opportunities?
Well, I can take a stab at that one to start with. I think that that's one of the things that we have been focusing on through the Centre of Training Excellence in Oil and Gas, the regional workforce tables and the natural gas workforce table and action plan group have all been looking at getting projects moving, developing the entry-level natural gas. It's really, while we're looking at that big picture and that long view, we're not waiting to find out if 1, 2, 3, or 4 LNG projects are going to go forward. We're doing training now, and we're really focusing on the 2 phases, because there's going to be a construction phase to all of these projects, and then there's going to be an ongoing phase to all of these projects. So I think that it's having those dialogues, but really from an action-focused perspective, having the right people at the table and not reinventing the wheel, working with our partners, and I think we all talked about it, collaboration, partnership, open discussion, and I think the panel that was just before the break this morning, one of the comments was not being afraid to have the honest conversations, to talk about, you know what, yeah, we're competing. We historically have been competing in this area. Never mind that. Put industry, students, and communities at the center. How do we find a solution together without necessarily getting that competitive edge? And we're having a number of conversations at that level at the moment.
We have to do whatever we can in partnership.
Yep.
What do the other panelists think?
So I believe there's 2 parts to this. Excuse me. One is the urgency and the burning platform, and we do need to move. If I use BCIT as an example, under our roof we deliver most of the trades that will apply to the LNG sector. We need to do that better, as I mentioned, with more efficiency, effectiveness, and partnerships. At the same time, we do need to look at the other partners with labor, with government, and work together before we run off and, to Laurie's point, and are not aligned in our strategy. Because in the end of the day, we will lose energy, we'll lose focus, and we'll lose industry's interest in trying to, and frustration will grow even higher than it probably already is in trying to work with post-secondary as a viable partner. We have such an opportunity right now, and if we don't seize that opportunity on a multi-focus basis, including the collaborative and purposeful understanding of what we have to offer together, we will lose the advantage for this province, I fear. So it's not just about delivering more, it's about how we work together, how we're going to solve problems and address issues together, and keep a monitor on that so that we're relevant to industry and at the same time serving our province as a first start.
Speaking again about collaboration and just taking it to the level even prior to young people entering into post-secondary, just a quick statistic, statistics say that basically about 20% of high school students graduating the next 3 years would have to enter into the trades to fill the pending skill shortages. And currently that statistic is about, it's a little less than 5%. But having said that, I think that as a group, as a whole, whether it's provincial government, the ITA, the post-secondary institutions, and organizations like ours that have that direct outreach, we are working together. I mean, the province just instigated the skills blueprint, which I think is incredibly proactive. So there is, that statistic is more of a target for us to reach to. And I think that if you look around, you'll see that measures are being put in place to make sure that we do have an engaged, educated education system with teachers, that we're ensuring that parents understand the opportunities that are going to present themselves with the LNG industry, and that students are prepared to enter into trades. Not all of them, of course, but what that does do is provide a pathway of support so that students that do decide to go into trades have that support system in place, including their friends and their families.
Yeah, Arvind, let me just build on some of what was said. One of the things that an institution like UBC needs to do is to really understand both the initial kinds of skills and then the spin-offs and the spin-offs to the spin-offs. And we've just done a first survey of this, and we saw 11,500 of our students are pretty directly enrolled in programs that will be needed by the LNG mission that we're embarking on. And so now the question for us is how to raise awareness both within the university and within broader society that the link is there and that these students are going to be really needed. And let me just say how we're doing this. When we look at our engineering, geology, geophysics, forestry, biology, natural resource management programs, well, there the link is pretty direct. From discovery to delivery of natural gas, those are the kind of peoples that are very directly going to be needed. In the construction part, we know we'll need engineers, business majors, and so on. And I think the workforce survey is 35,000. But then you go to the next level. We're going to need lawyers. We're going to need kids who understand Indigenous studies. If we're going to develop land agreements, we're going to need managers, marketing, accountants, business people. We're going to need healthcare workers. Lori mentioned this, healthcare workers, social workers. If we're going to build healthy communities, we're going to have a robust social fabric in the communities that are going to expand in the north. But then, one thing that I was really taken by is the very fast expansion we've had at UBC in Asian languages. Essentially, our whole linguistics programs have moved over to hundreds of kids studying Asian languages. And what I pointed out was that I think these kids are actually making smart decisions for themselves. They understand that it's the linguists, the cultural anthropologists that are going to be going to Asia and negotiating long-term LNG deals, and that the cultural norms in China are very different from Japan, are very different from Korea, and are definitely very different from cutting a deal in the US. So they understand that part of it. And then if you think about it even one step further, who is going to be thinking about the kinds of social licenses that we need, not just today, but the changing nature of social license for the next 30 years? Because that's one place that we've been caught off guard. I don't think Enbridge ever expected to have the kind of problems that they did in running Northern Gateway. So it's going to be really people trained in things like psychology, philosophy, history, that have those kind of critical thinking skills, that understand how to make the relevant arguments at the time and place to get those things done. So for our institution at UBC, because we're such a broad-based educational framework, we really have to think, where do we position ourselves in the big LNG mission, how we can collaborate with our institutions, how we can train our young people to respond to those kinds of needs.
Gary, what do you think? What can we do in the earliest stage to achieve success? How do we grab the low-hanging fruit?
Well, I think for me, there's a couple. Probably one of the most common words we've heard in the last couple of days is collaboration. And I would think that the next important word would be flexibility in working together and how we work. And just an example, and I'm going to make some numbers up. If the labor market data shows that we need 3,000 welders, for example, okay, then ITA is going to try and verify that through our sector advisory councils. And once that's verified, we're going to go to the Lories and the Cathys in the province and the other post-secondary institutions and the private training providers and say, what do we have to do to produce 3,000? Okay, and the instant answer is going to be, oh my goodness, we can't produce anywhere near that now. So what do we have to do for flexibility? How do we train in camps if we need to train in camps? How do we take the training to them in the north? Those are the types of things that we need to be investigating and working together with to come up with those solutions. And I'm fully confident that everybody's going to work together in order to achieve that same outcome. Because it's really the outcome that we need to satisfy.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and building on that, some of the examples that are already underway, there's a lot of areas where we are getting ahead of that curve already. And one of them is what we're doing at Northern Lights College is working with some of our sister post-secondary institutions who have wait lists and have agreements where they are, if we have room in programs that are in high demand and we are connected to the industry, it's a really, if you're going to train to work in the area where the jobs are, you're going to make those connections right through your training. And so those institutions are providing information on seats available at Northern Lights College where there is maybe a wait list at a larger institution in a larger center. That's a very concrete initiative collaboration that has to happen at the grassroots level. That you can't, that's not something that's going to happen because of a policy or because of some kind of directive. It really is that collaborative, those discussions. It's that pragmatic approach to, okay, these are the challenges we're facing. How can we address them together? You have a wait list, I have a need, and it's doing those really, that's the low-hanging fruit.
So government and others have worked very hard to do the gap analysis, to identify the demand stream and get in front of that. And that's what we're talking about here, is what do we need to do to get in front of that and satisfy the demand through our ability to supply skilled, trained workers.
So building on that, again, I go back to the point of let's not look at only the immediate need, but look at what we're currently doing, how we can realign resources that we currently are offering, programs that we're offering that may not in the immediate serve our short-term goal of starting to get our workforce going. And that includes the work of the group, the panel before us, of acknowledging the apprenticeship model, looking at harmonizing it, particularly across Western Canada as an immediate, working with our sister organizations across those provinces can bring us greater leverage in the short term. Working as well for BCIT with institutions such as Northern Lights where there is a need. They are helping us with wait lists and vice versa. Not being focused on the bricks and mortar, but getting some output. And also even to Arvin's point earlier about research, BCIT is looking at applied research. We're into the microgrid and LNG with motorcycles with China. How can we link together so that we are taking advantage of the best use of resources as we move forward? Because if we have a single voice or at least a coordinated voice for industry, that's really important. And just on that, when I mentioned the action plan for BCIT, one of the things we'll be doing is setting up an office so that industry doesn't have to make 10 calls to BCIT, but it'll be one to come into the system to try and streamline and make it simpler so that we get some response quicker.
Okay. Has there been any, what's happening in coordinating with our sister province to the east of us? What steps have been taken? What steps are being taken to your point, Kathy, in working on identifying shared needs and identifying, the demand and supply possibilities and all that.
Well, there's a long history of that, and one of the things that you learn very quickly when you go to northeastern British Columbia is that things like gas plays don't respect provincial borders. The Montney gas play crosses into Alberta, up into the Northwest Territories. There's the Horn River, but. So we have already established partnerships. We have collaborative programs that are delivered in collaboration with the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. The associations that are the key players in the industry are national for the most part. And so with the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, with the organizations, the workforce tables in Northern Alberta tend to link in with the workforce tables in Northern British Columbia. So there's already some work being done at that level. There's always the capacity to do more, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel there. We just need to build on some of those successes and see how we can make them more aligned with where the evolution is going now.
Gary, you got last word. 12 seconds.
In addition to that, the three premiers of BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan have recently formed a New West partnership, and ITA is working with our counterparts in the other two regions to try and harmonize a lot of the issues that create barriers for apprentices to move between the jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you very much to our esteemed panel. It's been a tremendous discussion. We value all of your insights, and as exciting as the opportunity is, there's a lot of work in front of all of us, all of you. Thanks for your time, and thanks to the audience.